"Daddy, she looks hungry. Can I share my food with her?" asked little Ellie, her big eyes fixed on the stranger across the street. It was a quiet afternoon in San Francisco. The sun hung low, covering the park in warm, golden light. A breeze carried the smell of grilled food from a nearby truck. Families strolled by, dogs barked, cars hummed past. At a small table near the truck, Andrew Miller, 38, sat with his 4-year-old daughter. His blazer hung open, sleeves rolled up, and the takeout box in front of him was barely touched. Across from him, Ellie swung her legs in her pink dress and sparkly sneakers, happily eating her grilled cheese sandwich. Her blonde curls bounced as she looked around with endless curiosity. Andrew watched her and smiled faintly. She had her mother's eyes. He lifted his fork, ready to take a bite. When Ellie suddenly stopped chewing, "Daddy," her voice was soft, hesitant. Andrew looked up. Ellie was staring at someone across the street. Near a lamppost sat a young woman, maybe mid-20s. Her long blonde hair hung in messy strands around her pale face. She wore a beige dress, once nice but now torn and dirty. She sat curled up, one hand on her stomach, the other bracing the ground. Her lips were dry, her skin pale. She looked weak, like she hadn't eaten in days. Andrew's jaw tightened. He said nothing, but Ellie tugged at his sleeve. "Can I give her my food, Daddy? She looks really, really hungry." Andrew glanced at his daughter. Something in him softened. He remembered his late wife, Marissa, who always carried snacks in her bag, always stopping to share with anyone in need. After she died of cancer, Andrew kept giving money to charities, but never again in person. Never face to face. Now, here was Ellie, only 4 years old, seeing what others missed. Just like her mother, Andrew stood up and held out his hand. "Come on," they crossed the street together. The young woman stirred and slowly lifted her face. Her tired blue eyes widened at the sight of them. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice raspy. "I don't mean to bother anyone. I just needed to sit." "You're not bothering us," Andrew said gently, crouching down beside her. "Are you okay?" Andrew asked. The young woman blinked slowly. Her stomach growled in reply. Ellie stepped forward and held out half of her grilled cheese. "You can have this," she said with a small smile. "It's still warm." The woman's lips trembled, her hands shaking as she took it. "Thank you," she whispered. I haven't eaten since yesterday. Maybe longer." Andrew glanced at Ellie, who gave a small, serious nod, almost like she was giving him permission. "I'll be right back," he said. He walked to the food truck, and minutes later returned with a bottle of water, another sandwich, and a hot cup of soup. The woman looked up, wide-eyed. "It's okay," Andrew said gently, setting the food beside her. "Just eat." Tears welled in her eyes. She nodded and lifted the soup carefully, sipping it slow as if it might disappear. Ellie sat down next to her, placing a tiny hand on her arm without saying a word. Andrew stepped back a little, watching them both, the exhausted young woman and his daughter with a heart too big for her age. The wind rustled through the trees, and for the first time in years, Andrew felt something stir inside his chest. Flicker of warmth he thought he had lost. She sat hunched at the curb, cradling the paper cup of soup like it was treasure. Her fingers shook with every sip. Steam curled upward, softening the sharp lines of her tired face. From far away, she could have been just another stranger on the street. But up close, Andrew saw something more. Beneath the dirt and exhaustion was a beauty that hadn't completely faded, like a painting left out in the rain. Her tangled blonde hair caught streaks of sunlight, and her skin, though pale and dry, still hinted at a softness that once came from easy smiles. Her large, weary blue eyes blinked slowly, as if staying awake took all her strength. "Take your time," Andrew said gently, crouching nearby with his hands resting on his knees. She looked at him with hesitation, then glanced at Ellie, who was humming softly while kicking pebbles with her shoes. The woman swallowed another spoonful of soup, her throat bobbing. The sandwich sat beside her, half-eaten. "I'm Claire," she murmured at last, her voice raw. "Claire Harper." "I'm Andrew," he replied. He gestured toward his daughter. "And this is Ellie." Ellie waved brightly. "Hi, Miss Claire." Claire gave a faint smile, but her lips quivered, and she lowered her gaze again. "I didn't mean to scare her," she whispered. "I wasn't begging, I just couldn't stay on my feet." "You didn't scare anyone," Andrew said in a calm, steady voice. "We were just having lunch, and Ellie saw you." Claire's shoulders curled in tighter, as though she wanted to disappear. She glanced at Ellie, then back at the ground. "I haven't eaten in 2 days," she admitted softly. "I thought I could last another night." Claire admitted quietly, "But I got dizzy. I didn't want to cause a scene." Andrew didn't answer right away. He studied her, face drawn, tired, but still holding a spark of strength. "Do you have anywhere to go?" he asked. Her hands tightened around the cup. "No," she murmured. "I used to. I had a place, a job, dreams, I guess. But then life happened." He didn't press. He just waited. "My dad died last year," Claire continued, her voice trembling. "A stroke. I was still in school, studying art education. I wanted to illustrate children's books." Ellie perked up. "I love books. Daddy reads me 3 every night." Claire's smile appeared, small but a little more real. "After my dad, my mum got sick, cancer, no insurance. I dropped out to take care of her. Worked at a cafe." Her eyes fell to the ground. "She passed away 6 months ago." Something in Andrew's expression shifted. The faintest flicker of recognition dash loss. Claire went on, faster now, as if the words had been waiting too long. "I stayed with a friend for a while. Then I met someone. I thought he was kind. He offered me a place to stay." She paused, her lips pressed tight. "But 2 weeks ago, he told me to leave. No warning. Changed the locks while I was at work. I missed my shift and lost the job." A short, dry laugh escaped her. "I've been sleeping in the park off 23rd, trying not to be seen, just trying to survive." Silence fell. Ellie dug into her lunch bag, pulled out a granola bar, and placed it carefully in Claire's lap. "Here," she said gently. "It has chocolate." Claire stared at the bar, then at Ellie. Her face crumpled. Tears slid down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't know why I'm crying." "It's okay to cry," Andrew said softly. Claire looked up at him, her eyes red and glassy. "I used to think I could fix everything," she said. "That if I just held it together, everything would be okay." Andrew nodded. "You don't have to hold it together right now." "Not here." Claire hugged the cup tighter, letting the tears fall freely. The wind stirred the leaves above them, and the noise of the city seemed to fade. For one fragile moment, it was just the 3 of them, a father, a child, and a woman learning how to breathe again sitting on a sidewalk where hope quietly returned. But the clouds rolled in faster than expected. The warmth of the afternoon slipped into a grey chill as wind swept through the streets. Leaves skittered along the pavement, and the golden light was gone, hidden behind dark skies. Andrew looked up, then back at Claire. "You can't stay out here tonight," he said. Claire glanced at the sky, then lowered her head. "I've gotten used to it," but her voice trembled, giving her away. Andrew hesitated, his hands sinking into his pockets. This wasn't something he usually did. Andrew wasn't used to helping like this. Usually, he gave from a distance, through donations, through foundations, not face to face. But then he looked down at Ellie. She was wrapping her tiny sweater around Claire's arm, trying to keep her warm. Claire blinked in surprise, then gently touched the girl's hand. Ellie beamed up at her. That was enough. "I live outside the city," Andrew said at last. "There's a guest room. You can stay a night or two just to rest." Claire's eyes widened. "No, I couldn't. That's too much." It's not charity," he interrupted gently but firmly. "Just a roof, a warm meal, a bed." Claire looked like she wanted to refuse, but exhaustion weighed heavier than her pride. "All right," she whispered. "Thank you." The ride was quiet. Claire sat in the back next to Ellie, who chatted about her favorite books and how she wanted to draw unicorns. Claire answered softly, though her eyes kept drifting to the window, watching the city lights fade into the distance. They pulled into a long driveway lined with oak trees. At the end stood a sleek modern house of glass and stone nestled in the hills. Warm lights glowed from inside. Claire stepped out slowly, clutching her worn tote bag. Mud-stained dress, tangled hair, scuffed shoes, she felt painfully out of place. But no one said a word. The front door opened before they reached it. A woman in her late 60s stood there, apron tied neatly, a dish towel in hand. Her silver hair was pinned in a bun. Her sharp eyes flicked over Claire. "Mr. Miller," she said, glancing between them. "This is Claire," Andrew replied. "She'll be staying in the guest room for a few nights. Could you help her get settled?" The woman, Mrs. Louise, as Claire would soon learn, paused. But when Claire lifted her gaze, their eyes met. Whatever Louise saw there, fatigue, vulnerability, a silent apology softened her expression. "Of course," she said gently. "Come in, dear." The guest room upstairs overlooked a quiet garden. The bed was neatly made with white linens. A soft robe hung on the door, and the bathroom was stocked with towels and lavender soap. Claire stood frozen in the middle of the room, as though afraid to touch anything. "Miss Claire, come see my room." Ellie's voice rang down the hall. Claire followed her to a cozy bedroom bursting with color. Stuffed animals lined the shelves. Stacks of books filled every corner. Dozens of paintings taped to the walls. Animals, smiling suns, and stick-figure families. Claire moved closer to one drawing. "You painted these?" Ellie nodded proudly. "Every week. Daddy says I should be an artist." Claire knelt to study a unicorn beneath a heart-shaped tree. "They're beautiful," she said softly. "You have a gift." From the doorway, Andrew leaned against the frame, arms crossed. "I don't know where she got it," he said with a small laugh. "I can't even draw a stick figure." Claire looked back at him and smiled gently. "Maybe she got it from her mum," Claire said softly. Andrew's smile faded. He glanced at Ellie, then looked away. Maybe, he murmured. Claire turned back to the drawings, brushing her fingers over the edge of one. For the first time in months, she felt safe. Not fixed, not whole, but safe, and Andrew standing in the doorway of the home he had guarded like a fortress for long. Lonely years felt something loosen in his chest. Something he hadn't let himself feel in a very, very long time. The days that followed were quiet, gentle, like ripples after a storm. Claire settled into the rhythm of the house quickly. Each morning she woke early, showered, and came down before breakfast. She offered to help Mrs. Louise in the kitchen. At first, the older woman resisted, but soon Claire was peeling vegetables, setting the table, moving quietly but with purpose. By the third morning, Andrew found her outside in the garden, kneeling in the dirt with a towel under her knees. She had borrowed old gloves and boots from the garage and was clearing the flower beds. "I used to plant daisies with my mum," she said softly when she noticed him. They were her favorite. He nodded, watching the way her hands moved carefully through the soil. Afternoons belonged to Ellie. They read together in the sunroom, nestled in pillows, surrounded by toys. Claire gave each story character a silly voice that made Ellie laugh until her belly hurt. Other days, they painted side by side, Liza's strokes wild and bright, Claire's soft and detailed. Sometimes Claire showed her how to draw animals, eyes, and hands. Ellie soaked it all in, and before long she was calling her Miss Claire with a kind of adoration that grew stronger each day. "She's good with her," Andrew remarked one evening as Mrs. Louise folded laundry. "She listens," the housekeeper replied. That child hasn't had someone really listen in a while. Andrew hadn't meant to watch Claire draw. It just happened. One evening, passing through the kitchen, he stopped when he saw her hunched over the table, sketchbook open under the warm glow of a lamp. Her pencil moved quickly, confidently, dancing across the page. Curious, he stepped closer. She was sketching him, and Ellie laughing, holding hands in the backyard. The detail was breathtaking. Ellie's curls, the sparkle in her eyes, the softness in their smiles. It looked like a memory caught in mid-laughter. Claire startled when she noticed him behind her. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "Ellie asked me to draw her favorite day." Andrew didn't answer at first. He just studied the sketch. "You're incredibly talented," he said at last. Claire glanced down, her voice small. "It's just a hobby now." "It shouldn't be," he replied quietly. Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them, but even as a blush rose to her cheeks, Claire pulled back slightly, as if reminding herself of a line she couldn't cross. That night, after Ellie had gone upstairs to bed, Claire stepped out onto the back porch. The sky was fading into dusk, painted in pale blues and purples. Crickets sang somewhere beyond the trees. Andrew joined her a few minutes later, leaning on the railing beside her. "I've been applying for jobs," Claire said, keeping her eyes on the horizon. "The community center is hiring for kids' art classes. And there's a diner downtown with a night shift." "That's great," Andrew said. "I can't stay here much longer," she added quickly, like a confession. He turned toward her. "You don't have to rush. No one's asking you to leave." "I know," her voice was soft, "but I need to stand on my own again. I've leaned too much already. You're not a burden, Claire." She shook her head, still staring into the yard. "You don't know what it's like. To go from someone with a future to someone people cross the street to avoid. I can't be anyone's charity case. not yours." Andrew was quiet for a long moment. Then his voice dropped, low and steady. "I lost my wife 4 years ago. Since then, I've forgotten how to let anyone in." Claire turned, eyes wide. "You weren't charity," he continued, meeting her gaze. "You were a reminder of what?" She asked carefully. "That kindness still matters, and that it's okay to feel again." Claire's eyes shone. She looked down, blinking hard. "I'm grateful," she whispered, "but I need to rebuild with my own strength." Andrew nodded. "I understand, just. No, you don't have to do it alone." Claire smiled faintly through the shimmer in her eyes. It wasn't goodbye, not yet, but the shape of it was beginning to form. Late Sunday afternoon, golden light poured into the sunroom, warming the floor and walls. Ellie sat cross-legged on the rug, crayons scattered around her, humming softly as she drew Dot in the corner. Claire stood with a flat, wrapped canvas clutched in her hands. Her expression was nervous, almost shy, but touched with quiet excitement. Andrew entered just as she turned. "I made something for Ellie," she said, holding it out. "I wanted to give it to her, but I thought you should see it first. Curious." Andrew raised an eyebrow and began unwrapping the paper. The moment his eyes landed on the painting, his breath caught. It was beautiful, dreamlike, full of life. In the center stood Ellie, her brown curls bouncing, her little hand tucked into the hand of a woman beneath a wide rainbow. Wildflowers bloomed in the grass, and the sky above was washed in soft watercolor hues. But it wasn't the rainbow, or the flowers that made Andrew's chest tighten. It was the woman. Her golden brown hair fell in soft curls past her shoulders. Her eyes were warm, her smile gentle, her light blue dress flowing in a painted breeze. It was Marissa, not dissimilar. Not almost, it was her. Andrew froze, staring at the canvas, his fingers tightening around the frame as if it might slip from his grasp. Claire noticed his silence and stepped back, her voice tentative. I hope that's okay. Ellie told me she missed her mum, and I just painted what I thought she was imagining." Andrew looked up slowly, his voice raw. "Did you see a picture of her?" Claire shook her head. "No, I never asked what she looked like. Ellie never showed me anything. Then how?" His throat tightened. "How did you know?" Claire lowered her eyes, visibly moved. "I didn't," she whispered. "But when Ellie talks about her, she glows. In this quiet, deep way. I tried to imagine the kind of mother who could leave that kind of joy behind in a child. I didn't think about features. I just felt it." Andrew blinked quickly, fighting the sting in his eyes. "She used to dance in the kitchen," he said softly. "Sing lullabies about the moon. She smelled like vanilla. Always wore soft sweaters." He turned back to the canvas. The posture, the tilt of her hand, the way the woman's fingers gently cradled Elisette wasn't just accurate. It was alive, as if someone had reached into his chest and pulled out a memory. "You painted her soul," he said at last, barely above a whisper. Claire's lips parted in surprise. She hesitated. "I didn't mean to overstep. I just wanted Ellie to feel her again, even for a moment." Andrew turned the canvas toward Ellie. Her face lit up. "That's me," she gasped. Then her little voice dropped to a reverent whisper. "And that's Mummy. That's really her." Claire covered her mouth, overwhelmed by the certainty in the child's eyes. Ellie leapt up and wrapped her arms around Claire's waist. "Thank you, Miss Claire. Now I can see Mummy in my room every day." Claire knelt and hugged her back, blinking fast against tears. Andrew stood in silence, watching them. Something long buried stirred in him, warm, aching, unfamiliar. For years, grief had been armor, but now cracks were spreading. That night, he hung the painting above Ellie's bed. It looked like it had always belonged there. As he stepped back, Claire appeared quietly in the doorway, arms folded gently across her chest. "I don't know how you did it," Andrew murmured, still staring at the canvas. Her voice floated softly behind him. "Maybe because she's still here, in Ellie, in you." He turned toward her, and for the first time in 4 years, the ache in his chest eased, not because the pain was gone, but because someone had seen it and honored it. Not with pity, not with words, with a brushstroke that had captured love itself. 3 weeks later, Claire began her new job at the local library. It wasn't glamorous minimum wage, limited hours, but it gave her purpose, a place to start again. Her mornings were spent shelving books, reading to toddlers, helping teens with homework. Evenings brought Ellie's hugs, simple dinners, and quiet conversations. Under the soft hum of Andrew's laptop in the next room, Claire kept a sketchpad tucked in her bag, drawing during lunch breaks or between story times. For the first time in a long while, she felt useful, needed, steady, until he showed up. It was a rainy Tuesday. Claire was restocking books in the children's section when she heard her name sharp cutting from behind. She turned, and her stomach dropped. Ben, the man who had kicked her out, left her with nothing. He looked worse than she remembered. Greasy hair, wrinkled clothes, but the same smug grin curled his mouth. The one that once charmed her and now made her skin crawl. "Didn't think I'd find you in a place like this," he sneered. "Hiding out in some rich guy's mansion, huh?" Claire's face went pale. "What do you want?" "I want what you owe me," he snapped. "You think you can just disappear with my stuff? My tablet, my watch, my money." "I didn't take anything," Claire said, her voice trembling. "You threw me out." Ben stepped closer, eyes glinting. "And you landed on your feet. That guy, Andrew Miller, right? CEO, mansion, daughter. What did you do to get into that house, Claire?" A librarian appeared at her side. "Sir, I need you to leave." But Ben ignored her, his voice rising. "You playing house with the billionaire now? You always knew how to make things work out for you." Security finally pulled him away, but not before his voice echoed through the quiet library. By the next morning, it was everywhere. Billionaire CEO's shocking secret. Mystery woman living in his mansion. From homeless to high societies, it love or a scam. Someone had snapped a photo of Claire barefoot in the garden, laughing with Ellie, sunlight on their faces. The image went viral. Her phone buzzed with calls she ignored at the library. Her manager called her in-kind but firm. "We love having you here, but the board doesn't want any controversy. We have to let you go." Claire nodded. No argument, no tears. She walked out with her sketchpad pressed to her chest like a shield. That night, while Ellie slept and Andrew worked late in his office, Claire quietly packed her things. On the guest bed, she left an envelope. No goodbye, no explanation. Just a folded note. "Thank you for showing me what light looks like. I'm sorry for the shadows I brought with me." Claire, she slipped out the side door the way she had first entered this life, quietly, unnoticed. Rain fell steady and cold. She didn't look back. When Andrew found the note, the house was still. He sat on the edge of the bed, the envelope in his hand, silence pressing in. His mind raced with Ellie's laughter, Claire's quiet smile, the way the painting had brought Marissa back to life, and for the first time in 4 years, the house felt empty. When Claire finally looked up, her breath caught. For a moment, she simply froze, one hand still on the little boy's paintbrush. Andrew was there tall, steady, out of place among the tiny tables and jars of tempera paint. His eyes were locked on hers, unreadable but burning with something she hadn't let herself imagine. "Kids," one of the volunteers called. 5-minute break. The children scattered to the snack table, giving them space without realizing it. Claire stood slowly, brushing her paint-stained hands on her jeans. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly, though her voice wavered. "I had to be," Andrew replied. Claire shook her head, eyes darting away. "You saw the headlines, the photos. I didn't want to bring any more shadows into your home, into Ellie's life. You think Ellie cares about headlines?" His voice was low but firm. "She cried herself to sleep for 3 nights. She thought she did something to make you leave." Claire's lips parted, stricken. "No," she whispered. "Oh God, no." Her voice cracked, and she pressed a hand to her mouth. Andrew stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You were never a shadow in that house, Claire. You were the light." Her eyes filled instantly. She turned away, blinking hard. But Andrew didn't let the space grow between them again. "I missed you," he said. "Not just for Ellie, for me." Claire let out a shaky breath. Andrew, the weight of everything, her pride, her fear, his grief, his restraint hung suspended in that quiet corner of the art center. Children's laughter rang out in the background, soft and distant, like another world. And for the first time since Marissa's passing, Andrew realized he wasn't just surviving anymore. He was reaching. "A year ago, I met someone on a sidewalk," Andrew said, his voice steady but thick with meaning. "She didn't have much that day. No home, no job, no reason to believe the world still had a place for her. But what she did have was something far more powerful, the kind of hope that survives storms." Claire's throat tightened. Her fingers curled gently around Ellie's. Andrew glanced toward them, then back at the crowd. "She gave my daughter laughter when the house had gone quiet. She gave me back pieces of myself I thought were gone forever. And through her art, she's given children everywhere something rare, a way to see that healing isn't about forgetting pain, it's about carrying it into something new, something beautiful." The audience leaned in, hushed, caught in the gravity of his words. Andrew's eyes found Claire's again, unflinching. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to introduce the illustrator, the heart, and if I may be so bold, the soul of this series." Claire Harper. Applause swelled, rolling through the gallery. Ellie tugged Claire's hand. "Go, Mummy," she whispered, beaming. Claire stepped forward, cheeks flushed, her heart pounding so loud she thought the whole room could hear it. As she climbed the stage, Andrew extended his hand not as a rescuer, not as a CEO, but as a man who had chosen her, fully and freely. She slipped her fingers into his, steadying herself, steadying him. For one timeless moment, the crowd disappeared. There was only the 3 of them, a father, a daughter, and a woman who had turned survival into art, grief into light, and strangers into family. And as Claire looked out at the rows of children, parents and teachers. She knew this wasn't the ending of her story. It was the beginning of all of theirs. She didn't hear him say, "I miss you." He didn't whisper, "Please come back." And he never said, "I'm sorry," instead. Andrew reached inside his coat and pulled out a cream-colored folder. "I wanted to give you this," he said. His voice calm, but full of meaning. Claire took it hesitantly, her fingers trembling as she opened it. Inside was a contract. At the top, illustrator, Healing Hearts Publishing Project. Beneath, a short description of a new children's series about resilience, loss, and emotional healing. Her name was printed clearly above the signature line. I don't understand," Claire whispered. Andrew's gaze softened. "We're launching a series for kids who've faced grief and change. We don't just need someone to draw it. We need someone who feels it." He touched his chest. "You're the only one I trust with this." Her eyes filled with tears. "After everything, you gave Ellie something I never could," he said. "You helped her feel her mum again. And you helped me feel again." Ellie, just 10 years old, grinned at him. Claire looked down, a tear splashing onto the page. "This isn't a favor," Andrew added gently. "It's a real job. One you've earned." Claire's voice broke. "Thank you." He didn't step closer. He didn't reach for her. He just nodded. Because this moment wasn't about saving her. It was about honoring her resilience, her worth, and giving her the chance to write the next chapter on her own terms. 1 year later, the air in San Francisco felt different, lighter, warmer. Brighter dot, Claire Harper, stood in the middle of a vibrant art gallery. Her name was written in elegant script beneath the title of a children's book series that had touched hearts nationwide. Her watercolor illustrations filled the walls, each painting born not only from talent, but from survival, from loss, from love. Children tugged their parents' hands, pointing at the artwork. Off to the side, a stage waited. Beside Claire stood Ellie, now 5.5, in a white dress with daisies along the hem. She clutched Claire's hand. "Mommy Claire," Ellie whispered. "Are you nervous?" Claire smiled, brushing a curl from her forehead. "A little. Don't be," Ellie said proudly. "Daddy says this is your day." Claire looked up. Across the room, Andrew stood at the podium, dressed simply in a grey suit. Their eyes met. His smile said everything. The room hushed as he spoke. "I've given many speeches," he began, "but never one like this." His eyes found Claire. "When I met her, she had no home, no job, but she carried a quiet strength I didn't understand at first. That woman didn't just change my daughter's life, she brought color back into mine." Gasps rippled through the crowd as Andrew stepped off the stage, walked toward Claire, and dropped to one knee. Claire froze. Ellie gasped. Cameras clicked. From his pocket, Andrew pulled a velvet box and opened it. "Claire Harper," he said steadily, "you didn't just illustrate a story. You helped write a new chapter in my life. You brought laughter into my home, light into my daughter's world, and peace into my heart." His voice wavered. "You saved us, and I love you. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife?" And Ellie's mother, Claire, covered her mouth, tears spilling. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes." Ellie squealed, clapping until her little arms shook. "Yay, now I have a mummy and daddy forever." Their wedding was small and perfect. In the backyard of Andrew's home, the same place Claire once planted flowers with Ellie. Wildflowers surrounded them. Fairy lights glowed in the trees. No reporters, no headlines, just love on the final page of their very first book. One last illustration appeared, 3 figures painting at a table together. Ellie held her brush high. Claire added vibrant color. Andrew lifted a clumsily drawn heart, smiling with joy. Beneath it, in Claire's handwriting, sometimes all it takes is one little heart to change 3 lives forever. And in this real-life fairy tale, that little heart had a name.